Each time we've run this car, the brake bias has been set heavily towards the rear. In fact, so much so that it burnt through a set of rear pads in one meeting. And this was weird because we have a balance bar in the car and this should have been working. And this was keeping me awake at night. Every night I dreamt the same horrible image. Until eventually I had an idea. So I set to work. And by the time the sun came up, I'd built myself a thinking chair. So I sat down and began to think. And then the answer came to me. You see, the balance bar was connected to the wrong side of the rod. So I turned the knob the other way, and now we have front brakes. Yeah, so now we better let the mechanics get to work. The rear diff was leaking pretty badly out of this drive shaft seal here, so we take the drive shaft off, get in there, give it a clean and change that seal. And you can put the drive shaft back in, make sure it's on nice and tight, and give it a good wipe down. Now she's clean. Next up we're going to finish off the coolant plumbing. When I built the car, this is all a little bit temporary. You can see how those hoses there are sitting on top of the steering rack reservoir. So I've got some new hoses and we've plumbed it, run it along that rail there, much neater now and out of the way. Everything's cable tied, so it's not going to snag on anything. So at last we can put some Motorsport Australia approved coolant into it. And then of course we need to pressure bleed the system and pressure test it. Just pumping it up there. And once that's done, we can bolt the manifold back on, get everything looking tickety-boo, drain out the oil and give it an oil change. Squirt it underneath and get rid of all that leaking oil we had there, which is now fixed. And at last we can start it. Give it a bit of a rev. So now I've got the car home, we can crack on and get that bonnet fixed. This bonnet's made in two halves. The top half is carbon fibre and the bottom part is fiberglass. Of course you have to bond them together. Now unfortunately the glue that I use seems to have delaminated and we've had to use a bit of tape. You can see in the photo there how the wind's getting into it and just causing it to pop apart. So we need to get all this tape off and give it a good clean up and try and bond it back together again. Now we've just got to give everything a sand to give it a nice key. I'm going to fiberglass in the back here as well to get this underneath to stick properly to the top skin. We're just using a bit of masking tape to make a fence so that the resin won't sort of drip underneath and eat into that paint. And then we can start to apply some fiberglass resin and get that matting on. This will make the bonnet pretty stiff. Now getting some resin into that sort of underneath the skin there. I ended up using fiberglass filler on this. I couldn't really get this mat to stick down properly, so I put some fiberglass filler in there, wedged it in, and then I've clamped it shut, and it's come out pretty good. Now we're really trying to wedge that filler into that gap there, make sure we get a nice bond. and because I'm not really that confident with it, I'm going to put some rivets into it. It's pretty ugly, but it will do the job, and I need this bonnet to be stiff. I think at some point I'm going to make another one of these, and I'll just make sure I spend more time cleaning it up and making sure that the epoxy glue's got something to stick to. I probably didn't key the surface enough when I glued these two parts together. But I'm pretty happy with how it came out. It's now really stiff across the front, and there's no way that's going to delaminate again. Now, because it was delaminating and flexing, it's actually cracked all the filler that I had to use around the old roundel. When this came out of the mould, the roundel wasn't really that great, so I covered it over and I just used a sticker on it. Now you can see I popped the bog out there, just having a look at it. Using stickers is a really kind of Porsche thing to do with emblems. It's another way for them to save weight and charge you more money. Now what I've done here is I've got a cup which turned out to be the perfect size for that hole. Once that's secured down in place, I can use that as a template to run some filler around, and that'll give me a really nice even hole to put the badge in. There we go, I put some tape around that little bit of plastic so that the filler won't stick to it. And now we're just screwing it down, make sure it doesn't move, and we can start to get that filler on. There we go. Not exactly an artist at work, but it'll get the job done. Making sure it's getting right in there so that we've got a really nice line there for when I put that badge in. I want it to look pretty good. Big thumbs up there. Pretty happy with how that came out. Now we get it sanded back and we're ready to mask up and get some paint onto it. I've decided I'm not going to go to the effort of getting the spray gun out for this. It's probably only temporary, given that I'll be redoing this bonnet and respraying it once Historics is over. So we'll mask it up, make sure we don't get paint where it doesn't need to go. I like this green masking tape, I get it from the fiberglass shop. It's pretty cheap, it sticks really well, you get a nice edge with it. Once we're masked up, we'll give it a wash down with the prep wash. Make sure that surface is really nice and clean and doesn't have any grease or wax left on it. Now that's good, we'll just hit it with the heat gun there, warm it up, and we can start putting the undercoat on. This is a primer filler, it's a pressure pack, it's acrylic. I don't normally like it, but for this small job it'll be fine, and we're going to repaint it soon anyway. You can see in between coats here, I'll just hit it with a heat gun again. It's still winter here in Tassie, so it's not the warmest, but using the heat gun makes the paint dry pretty quickly, and we can get on and get this finished. Once that's done, we can pull that masking tape off. We need to make a new bigger line. We want to go over that black, so when I rub it back, I'm not going to rub through the primer again. So we'll mask that back up, and then we can get some top coat on it. I'm reusing that bit of brown paper. It's a small job. Once again, heat gun. This time we're using the acrylic black top coat. Give it plenty of paint because we want to rub it back. Last couple of coats, you want to put it down nice and wet. Gives it a bit of shine and just makes it look a bit smoother. And then a day or so later we can pull it all off and polish it up and pop that badge back on. Doesn't look the best, but it will do for Historics. Now I was going to talk about the fiberglass dashboard, but it probably won't be ready for quite some time. There's so much work going into this and I want to be able to pump a heap of these out. So for the moment, the dashboard's on the back burner. A lot of work's gone into this plug, so it looks pretty fantastic at the moment and hopefully we can get a really great mould. Well, thanks for watching, and the next episode will be all about Baskerville Historics. Tool on!